Please welcome Amanda Silver.
Thank you, everybody. Hi, I'm Amanda Silver, and I'm excited to be at GitHub Universe. I've been at Microsoft for actually 2 decades, always working on behalf of developers on all of the tools and the programming languages and the platforms that you all use and that you know and love. My mission is to unleash the creativity of developers so that they can bring their ingenuity to life. As we obsess over accelerating each code, build, and debug cycle, Visual Studio Code and the Visual Studio family have become the most widely adopted, the most beloved tools in the industry. Visual Studio Code has the 2nd most contributors of any project on GitHub. And .NET has become the most used and most admired open source developer framework, with over 6.5 million developers using it monthly. TypeScript, which is one of the first open source projects that I worked on at Microsoft, has become the 3rd most popular language on GitHub. And contributing to open source has become ubiquitous throughout Microsoft, where we have 25% of the top 20 open source projects and over 68,000 employees on GitHub, many regularly contributing to open source GitHub repos. And that includes Kubernetes and the CNCF ecosystem, where we were the #2 contributor last year. Over the past few years, I've been working on the AI-assisted development, co-developing GitHub Copilot. And from my experience, based on what you saw earlier today, AI is absolutely changing everything. AI is transforming everything we do, from our roles and processes to the way teams work, and it's disrupting industries. It's the most profound technological shift in our generation, and we're just in the early innings of broad adoption. So when I think about how AI impacts developers, it's becoming an essential tool for every developer, no matter what they are building. It will help them onboard faster and learn more quickly and accomplish repetitive and mundane tasks with little effort, so developers can focus on the creative side of coding. And every application will be reimagined now that AI has become a building block we all know how to use. Next-generation developers will have AI as their co-pilot, guiding them at every step, from idea to code to the cloud. This partnership between human ingenuity and artificial intelligence will lead to faster development cycles, higher quality software, and more satisfied end users. Next-generation developers will have AI as their co-pilot, guiding them at every single step. But enough talking and more coding with joy. I'd like to welcome Burke Holland to the stage to show us the next-generation developer experience. Burke? Hey, welcome.
Hey, what's up, Whoa, that was a great picture of me. Hey, what's up, Universe? It's good to be with you today. I'd like to show you an application, a demo, but it's actually more than just a demo. This is an app I've been working on and using GitHub Copilot to help me build. And I'd like to show you what it does. So what we do with this application is we can take a video here like this one. This is an excellent video. By the way, like and subscribe, youtube.com/code.
You're always self-promoting.
Shayne, but I have a mic. I have to get it out. And then what we can do is paste this in here as the source in this application. And then after we do that, we can come down and choose a prompt here, like asking this thing to create a video description complete with timestamps. Now, the reason why this works is because we are downloading the timestamps and the captions from YouTube, and then we can use that to create all kinds of content. Now, it's not perfect, right? But it does work, and it gives us a place to start with. So I've been using GitHub Copilot to build this, and it's worked really, really well. But GitHub Copilot, we think about it for coding, and you've seen a lot of Copilot demos today. But I want to show you how GitHub Copilot can do more than just help you write code, but help you with the entire coding process. So one of the first things that this app doesn't have is any tests at all. 0 tests. Does anybody have an app with 0 tests?
I think that's
yes, exactly, right? And the reason why this is because we're busy building, right? And a lot of times getting set up testing is the hardest part of testing. And so we're going to see if GitHub Copilot can help us with this. So I'm going to come down here and go to Setup Tests, right? And when I do that, the workspace is going to enter the chat. Oops. And then the workspace itself knows about my workspace, my project. And you can see it knows that I have a Vue.js front end and an Azure Functions backend. And I can actually refine this a little bit and say that I want to use vtest, which it gives me as an option. And it's like, great, let's create a vtest configuration. So I'm going to go ahead and apply these changes here.
Awesome. So it makes a recommendation for you right in the context of the chat.
Right in the chat, based on what it knows about my project here. And then it says the next thing you need to do, it's walking me through step by step. It says you need to install vtest, so let's do that. Now, what you see down here, all this business, is my API actually running. So you can see it terminates the API because we need to install this package, and it knows that. And now, running out of real estate here, let's pull this down. The next thing that it's going to ask us to do is actually run vtest. And all right, so we have a test here. We can actually go in and fix this.
That's awesome.
But that's actually not the last thing that it tells us here, right? If we jump up here and look, it says, I also recommend installing the vtest extension. So let's go to the Extension Explorer, and here's the vtest extension. Now watch this. When I install this, what it does is it lights up testing inside of Visual Studio Code. Boom, right there. This is actually what I want, right? I want to have my testing integrated with my editor. And I didn't have to know how to set that up. And you shouldn't have to know how to set that up. That should just work for you. OK, so now we have this, right? And you can see it's even telling me here that I've got an error, so we could go there. I'm actually going to have it generate another test for us. So I'm going to come down here to my API. I'm going to come to services. Let's go to the auth service here. Let's make some more real estate. I'm going to select the whole thing and type tests. Now, when I do this, it notices, oh, you don't have a test file for this specific file, right? You don't have a corresponding test file. So it pops open another panel to create another one. And we can scroll down here and see all of the different tests. So let's go ahead and accept this. And then let's save it. And we'll call this auth service.test. And it's going to put it right in the services folder, which is just fine with me.
So it really knows a lot about your project, your context, and your developer experience in VS Code.
Exactly, exactly. And then you can see here, because of the Test Explorer, it's starting to light up and showing me that these tests have already run and they're already passing, right? So this is how Copilot can help you not just write code, but get set up with the stuff that you might be avoiding, right? You don't have to avoid it anymore. Go ahead. And listen, a failing test is better than no test at all, somebody once told me. So at least get you a failing test going. All right. The next thing that this application doesn't allow me to do is debug. Now, I can debug in the browser DevTools. So I could come here, let's select one of these options. Like I could go to tweet and then click send, but let's say I want to capture that. All right, I could do it in the browser DevTools, but this real estate is cramped, and I like to debug where I write my code, right? That's just a better experience. But again, this is something you need to set up, and so a lot of us just avoid this, and we just debug in the browser. Right, Copilot can help with this as well. So I'm going to come down and just say start debugging. So when I do this, VS Code itself enters the chat. And VS Code knows about its own documentation, all of that's indexed, so it can set up a launch configuration for you. Now, what it's done here is it's actually set up a launch configuration for the backend, right? So we can be a little bit more specific and say Vue.js front end running on port 4280. All right, now let's see if it can give us a launch configuration specifically for our front end. And boom, it does.
Awesome.
Right, so we have a couple options here. We could start debugging directly from here, but what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to save this configuration. And when I do that, it adds it to my launch configurations right here. And I'm going to make one small change because I'm not using Chrome. And then let's go ahead and bounce our API. Perfect. And then let's go ahead and drop a breakpoint here. It's almost as if I've prepared for this demo. So here's our breakpoint. Actually, let's fire up the debugger first. So I'm going to come back. I'm going to fire up the debugger here, and you can see it's now in the debug choices. I'm going to click Start. And this will open a browser instance. Let's go ahead and add a breakpoint like that. And we go ahead and log in. Perfect. Oops. We go ahead and...
So what you guys are seeing here are live demos. Everything that we're going to be showing you here today is live because we know that's what developers really appreciate. And
Exactly.
you can actually try everything that we're showing here at home today.
Right. So we're doing the AI stuff live in front of you, which is kind of risky, but this is what it means to demo in 2024.
Yep.
Here we are. So I'm going to click send, and boom, we are debugging inside of Visual Studio Code just like that. Because again, as a developer, you're writing code. You shouldn't have to worry about writing launch configurations as well. We can solve that for you, right? We can step through, step over. It's beautiful. It's beautiful. All right. The other thing this application does not have is any documentation whatsoever. This is not, we probably should not put this app in production, right? It's not ready. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to document the code using GitHub Copilot. But I'm sure that you've probably seen that demo before. I don't want to redo that demo, OK? I want to show you something different. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up the new Copilot editing experience in Visual Studio Code. And what I want to do is I want to get all of my services files here. So we have the auth service, the download service, and the prompt service. I'm going to drag these over and drop them. And I'm going to say, please, not in all caps. I don't want to shout at the AI. Please document these files. And then I'm going to come down and I'm going to go to my model picker, the new model picker. Look at the models, y'all. Isn't that exciting? Look at this. All right, and I'm going to select O1 Mini. Now, why am I going to select O1 Mini? Because I find that I get pretty good results for documentation. But the point is that you can pick the model that you like the most, that you think works best, and you can play around with different models and see which one gives you the best result. So as you see, what's happening here is the changes are streaming in. So you can see that over here on the left side, and then you can see that happening across the top as well. So we have documentation for the auth service, the prompt service, and the download service. And we can go through and see the documentation. I see some red there. I don't like that. So what I'm going to do here, instead of accepting everything, is I'm going to take the auth service, cool. I'm going to take the prompt service, but I'm going to discard the download service because I don't feel good about that one, and boom, we're done, right? And now we've got some really nice documentation, and look at how good O1 Mini is at doing JS docs, right? It's just really, really good at this job. Phenomenal. All right. There's one last thing I want to do, and I hesitate to do this, but I'm going to try to use this new editing experience to add a feature that I've been meaning to add for months, just right here in this demo.
It's pretty bold.
Yeah, it's a terrible idea. We're going to do it anyway. So I'm going to open up here. I'm going to grab the download service because I wrote this app, so I know something about it. And what I want to do is use this editing experience to work with a single file. Okay? You can work with multiple files, but you can also work with a single file, and it's a powerful experience for this, especially when you know exactly what you need to do. So let's give this a shot. Here we go. Everybody, cross your fingers out there,
My
please.
heart is pumping.
Mine is too. I'm actually going to switch back here to GPT-4o, and I'm gonna let's do this. Add the ability to download comments from the YouTube API. You can return the comments in the same response as the captions. All right. So what you just saw there was me use something called VS Code Speech. And VS Code Speech is free. We build it. It's cross-platform. It's available to everyone. All you have to do is click on that mic button, and if you don't have it, we'll help you get that extension installed. And then let's see, and let's look what it's done here. So it's added the Google APIs package. Cool. Looks like it's added a Get YouTube Comments function. It's changed the response. Let's scroll down to the bottom. All right, so this looks pretty good. The only thing it's missing, I just want to ask for one more thing. It looks like my API key is missing. Can you add it securely from the process.env variable? So the cool thing about chat is that you can iterate with the model, and now the model can iterate right here in your code, right? So let's go ahead and accept this. We'll save. I've never been so nervous in my life. I'm going to bounce the API. Let's go ahead and collapse this. It's back up and running. Let's go back to our application. There's no shot this works. Why did I do this? Clear, paste in, set source. Did it work? There's the captions. Do we have comments? Scrolling. I think this is about a 10-minute video. We're almost there. We're almost there. Oh my gosh, we do. We have comments. We have comments. All right, awesome. So now Incredible, incredible. Now, because we've added that, we can say, please analyze the comments for insights, even if we can't spell analyze correctly. Models don't care. They're really, really good at misspellings. By the way, if you're correcting your misspellings in GitHub Copilot, you don't have to do that. It's fine with your misspellings. And just like that, we've got set up with, what did we do? We did testing, we did debugging, we did documentation, and we even added a feature all in the span of what I hope was 8 minutes, because that's all you gave me. All right.
Thank you, Burke.
Thank you so much. Great to see you, Universe. Have a great conference.
All right. So as Burke showed you, with GitHub Copilot, developers can focus more on the joyful parts of being a developer, the creativity, the problem solving, rather than being bogged down by repetitive and undifferentiated tasks like documentation and creating tests and writing configuration. With the deep integration of GitHub Copilot into your code editor, Copilot knows about your code, about the context of your project, and everybody else's code that came before you. And because it exposes the actions right there in the code editor, you don't have to hunt and peck to move fluidly as your ideas are expressed through your fingertips or via voice. But gone are the days where everything you're developing against is encapsulated in your code editor and available on your local machine. A modern cloud-native application has dependencies on managed resources and continuous integration, continuous deployment pipelines. And local debugging is great, but shifting analytics from production diagnostics is even better. And getting this all to work together, it sometimes feels like rocket science. So GitHub Copilot also makes it easier to learn about how to build and deploy to the cloud, and how to do it without friction right from the cockpit where your code lives. So I'd like to welcome Shayne Boyer to show you GitHub Copilot for Azure. Come on out.
That's going to be a hard act to follow.
All right, let's do it.
All right. So everything we saw Burke do was local and super awesome stuff. Multi-file edit, comments, and all that kind of stuff. Burke has reached out to me and said, I need this in the cloud. So what I'm going to do is use GitHub Copilot for Azure and see what we can do to get that up there. Now, very complex application. We've got some OpenAI infrastructure. We've got static web apps. We've got functions. And I've never tried to deploy all that from VS Code in one shot. So we're going to see if we can get that working.
All right.
I noticed he was using GPT-4o as his model. So the first thing I want to do is maybe ask and make sure I have access to that in my subscription. So I'm going to ask at Azure, and I'm going to use the voice thing as well. List what regions are available for GPT-4o. Let's see if this works. So what this is doing is it's actually looking at my subscription and my tenant and seeing if I have access to my made-up model that I mispronounced here, and see if I have access in all the regions where my subscriptions are valid. My guess is it's probably not going to find GPT Forum, but we'll see if it's good. So it didn't find the one I asked for because we misspoke.
All the GPTs.
But that's okay. We have all the GPTs available, which is great, and we'll just go with that. So again, knowing the complexity of his application that he has, I'm not sure how it works. It's got view and functions and all of that. What I'm going to do now is maybe see if I can find a template or some code samples that might be able to help us out. So let's ask, create a RAG chat app with GPT-4o. So here, we get a little prompt notification, and it's actually searching for templates. And it's looking at all of our Azure app AI samples that we have to see if we can find something to meet that requirement. And it says, look, I found a chat plus vision using Azure OpenAI template, which is really close to kind of what we're doing here. It's Azure Container Apps, it's got a managed identity, and it gives me a quick little prompt here to use the Azure Developer CLI and init that here. So I can just click this here. Gives me a little init quick start, hit enter, and it's going to clone that code to my machine, initialize that Git repository, and ask me for a name. So we'll say GitHub testing app. Let's just do that. And I'm all set. We open that code here, and we've got all this code here, all this sample.
That was quick.
And this is a validated sample from our AI app gallery. It's run through testing. It's a full app architecture, which is super great. Now,
So it's not dynamically generated. It's actually found something that we have kind of curated and blessed and kind of made sure it follows Azure best practices.
that's correct. It uses all of our, like I said, even it told us managed identity, Azure Container Apps. We know that this is going to work using the Azure Developer CLI, and we have a lot of samples out there.
Awesome.
So that's super great. I can look through this. It's got docs. It's got our infrastructure here. It's code using Bicep, and we have Terraform as well available to us. So once I look at all that, I want to now be able to deploy this app. And it even gives me a prompt like, hey, I would like to deploy this app to Azure. So let's go ahead and ask, how would I deploy this? I deploy this application.
Good enough spelling.
It's close. Burke said that it's going to work if I got close. So we've already done the init here, and it says, hey, do an AZD up. So again, using the Azure Developer CLI, gives me that nice prompt. I click up. It's going to ask me for a little bit of information, maybe about my subscription, and go ahead and take all of that code. Here we go. We want to use that subscription. It's going to retrieve our locations, ask us where we want to deploy that. We'll probably choose West US 2 because that's where we're operating, and it's going to go and kick off that deployment. Now, I have done this in the past. We know it's going to be super fast, but in the interest of time, this actual application takes about 4 minutes to deploy. So if I look at this deployment in the past, actually here, so this is the deployment that's run, and you can see that it's not just a web application and maybe some backend functions. We see here we've got roles, we've got Azure Container Apps instances, we've got an OpenAI instance, we've got logging, analytics, all of that. There's a full
So it's a full cloud-native application architecture.
Right, and again, up and running in 4 minutes. I can even show you it's running here, which is great. This is a great little vision app. We can choose maybe my office background image here, and we'll just ask a quick question like, how many plants are in this pic? Let's just see.
That's a lot of plants.
Thinking it's a lot of plants. 17 plants. You can validate that for yourself. So this is a great sample from Pamela Fox, who's here presenting as well, using these things. And this is just one of those templates that's available for us using the API.
Awesome.
So hopping back here, one of the things that after we've gotten up and running, we see all this architecture here. One of my concerns, day 100 after this is, what do my costs look like?
That's always a concern.
It's a big concern. Templates, we've got our testing applications, our production applications. So let's just go back over into VS Code. And maybe I want to ask a question like, can you show me the cost breakdown of my services for, let's say, August of this year in my current subscription? So now the GitHub Copilot for Azure is going to look at my current logged-in subscription that I'm in, look at that cost management AI assistant that we have, and give us that breakdown of the services and break down the percentages of what it's cost me over that particular month. And you can see here, no surprise, cognitive search for us. It's 27% of our cost.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So you basically went from absolutely nothing to deploying an application in about 4 or 5 minutes to being able to actually see what your costs are on the cloud.
Yeah, and I can even use this cost management to look at a specific app by specifying that by app name if we were running this Vision one for a while as well.
Awesome. That's all with.
You can grab it today.
That's great. Thank you so much, Shayne. Thank you, Shayne. So Shayne just showed you just how easy it is to learn Azure, to provision resources, to deploy your code, and to diagnose and resolve issues quickly and get information about the costs of your solution. And you can all get this today at aka.ms, get GitHub Copilot for Azure. You see the link up there. Now, as a part of that demo, Shayne also showed the easiest way to get started building an AI app with our Azure AI samples, which has a ton of samples across Python, JavaScript, Java, .NET, and examples integrating common AI building blocks like LangChain and Pinecone and Arise. And all you have to do to get started is to start using GitHub Copilot and GitHub Copilot for Azure with guidance at every single step. So you can get started today building your own AI app at aka.ms/AI apps. So what you saw in the demo is that GitHub Copilot can be augmented and grounded with your Azure environment that you define in GitHub repos with infrastructure as code and deploy via GitHub Actions for Azure. Then we take the Azure Resource Graph and the Azure CLI and the diagnostic and cost information and enlighten the GitHub Copilot with the dynamic knowledge of your Azure tenant and your subscription. That makes it so much easier to learn, to navigate, to modify your Azure environment because you can do it all in the context of your code editor. No more searching for the right panel in the Azure portal or in other websites. So we've talked about how AI is going to make it easier to write production-ready code and deploy it to the cloud, but how will the apps themselves change with AI? What does it mean to be building an intelligent application? Intelligent apps provide a level of personalization and usability that traditional apps just can't match. Unlike static and costly to update traditional apps, intelligent apps are dynamic and adaptive. They use natural user interfaces, which are intuitive and easy to use, like natural language input and voice and ambient awareness. And with integrated data analysis, they can learn from user behavior to anticipate needs, making them more responsive, efficient, user-centric, all while continuously improving the app. But this also means that the way that you code and what you code will actually need to evolve. In the past, developers focused on translating requirements into code and building and testing functionality through manual coding and manually generated tests and iterative processes, and continuous improvement always required manual work. But to achieve the promises of intelligent apps, developers now need to evaluate models. They need to curate data sets. They have to test on unseen data. And they have to continuously optimize the models and the user experience. And this paradigm shift requires that developers not only enhance their technical skills, but also adopt a strategic mindset so that their solutions can have the maximum impact. So to show you what I mean, I'd like to welcome Soojin Choi to the stage to see VS Code and GitHub Copilot and how they can help you build more intelligent applications. Soojin? Welcome.
All right, so we got our app and we know how to deploy it. Let's have it so that we not only have our social assistant generate content based on a blog post or a YouTube video, but also have knowledge of VS Code features. Oh, excuse me, I was running. VS Code features so that it can link to the most relevant ones when it generates content. And for that, we'll need to use RAG. I'm using notebooks here because Notebook provides an interactive coding environment where we can enables like kind of fast iteration and testing, right? And then it leaves a good documentation of the processes. So I'm using notebooks inside VS Code today, connected to code spaces. All right, so let's first begin by mimicking a very simplified version of Burke's app in the next few cells here. And I'm going to have Copilot generate some code for us. Fetch the contents of a blog post given a URL and output it in JSON using Beautiful Soup.
The computer heard it better than I did.
All right, it's generating content, but it's not only just kind of following my orders, it's actually actively using content from the notebook. So it used that URL from the previous cell that I just ran. So I'm going to go ahead and accept what it gave me, but actually save this as content for later use. And let me run that. So we got our code written. We got our blog post content in a matter of seconds, right? OK, and for our model now, we want to give it the role of a social assistant who generates LinkedIn posts. It's essentially the same kind of the message that Burke had for his social assistant. And for our model, we'll actually, navigate to GitHub models. There's a host of models here, both chat models and embeddings models. I'm going to choose GPT-4o Mini for today. And to use this model or any other models on the GitHub models page, click on the Get API Key button, select your language. And now usually you'd have to create your PAT tokens, it's not hard, but it does add some extra steps to the workflow. Today we can skip that because remember we were connected to code spaces, right? So for that, GitHub tokens are already injected into code spaces for us.
That's also a more secured way to do it so that you don't have the API keys directly in your source code.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I just got down here to the basic code sample. I'm just going to copy what it gave me and paste that code into our notebook here and give it our messages instead of the messages that they had. Run the cell, and it should give us our LinkedIn post.
Awesome.
Great. Okay, so we will start that RAG process now by doing a text search first using BM25, which is one of the most accurate form of text searches. And for that, let's not dump the entire blog post into the search because that would be 1, overkill, and 2, super noisy. So let's first extract some key topics from the blog post that we just fetched. And to do that, I'm going to use my model again. But this time, I'm just going to give a different message so that I can extract those key topics and run the model. And we should get back, there we go, a variety of topics that we can play around with in our text search. And now that we got our key topics kind of as like a search phrase almost, we need our search base, right? So for that, I'm going to use VS Code release notes that I've already saved onto the disk here. And I am going to import that data into the notebook. And you can't really see my fingers here, but I'm literally just tabbing and entering because Copilot is anticipating my code from my comments.
That's awesome. So you just wrote that one comment in that particular cell.
Yep.
And then based on that, you can do the tab for Copilot to complete the rest of the code.
Yep,
That's
exactly. It looks like it did, but as with everything, trust but verify, right? I'm going to open this in Data Wrangler.
What's Data Wrangler?
So it's a place where you can essentially view and manipulate your data. It's a sandbox environment, so you can play around with your data any way you want, and it's kind of a safe way to do that.
So it's a great way to basically do data preparation in the context of VS Code,
Yep.
which is kind of a pretty common task for building intelligent apps with AI.
Yep, exactly. Yeah. So let's take a look at our data that was loaded. It looks like, yes, all the data was loaded, except all of the data was loaded, dating back to 2016, and VS Code has definitely moved on. Let's filter this data to include only the features that were implemented in the last 2 years. So something that contains 2023 or something that contains 2024. And when I apply that, I should see 2023 features here as well as 2024 features. Great. So we can preview the code that Data Wrangler has automatically generated for us down here. And with a single click here, we can export that code back into our notebook. And I can, bye-bye. I can run that cell to actually filter our data. Great. So we got our search key topics of search terms, and then we got our search base. Let's actually do that text search. Now, even though BM25 is a really common way of doing text searches, it is pretty tedious to implement it myself, so I'm going to delegate that task to Copilot again. So create a function to perform text search over our filtered data.
That's cool. So you can basically input variables from the context of your notebook into Copilot.
Exactly. It knows about the the active kernel, so we can say these are the kernels that we want to use for our code. So our clean data using BM25 with the key terms that we've extracted and return the top 10 documents. You see that it's using our variables, and here we have our top 10 documents. Hopefully when I accept and run it, there we go.
Awesome.
Yeah. So, I mean, if we just take a quick pause here, right? Like, we literally just did a sophisticated search over 2 years of VS Code features that were implemented in like
a few seconds.
A few seconds.
Yeah.
I mean, this is literally how I level up my productivity. So I'm really excited about this. Okay, so now that we have our 10 features that we could link in our LinkedIn post, but who needs another LinkedIn post that is overfilled with links, right? So nobody. Let's actually do some re-ranking of the data, or the features that were returned, so that we can link the top 3, kind of the most relevant ones in our post. To do that, I'm going to use our model again. I mean, there's many ways to do this. We can use embeddings models. We can apply like neural network. But I'm going to use our model again, just with a different message, because I've been playing around with this model, experimenting with it this whole month, and I have not run out of my free credits yet. So why not take advantage of that? Great. So we got our 3 features that are most relevant to the blog post, the original blog post. OK, moment of truth. Here's our social assistant again. And here I'm passing it not only the blog post, but also our features that were retrieved. And when we run it, we should get back an error. And I'm going to ask Copilot to fix that for me. Let's see what Copilot comes up with. OK, it says that I actually forgot the function to create, to call the function. And I'll accept and run. And obviously, Copilot was not trained on how to call GitHub models, because GitHub models is newer than Copilot model here. But it was able to actually call or suggest the right fix by looking at the code from the previous cells, right? It saw how I've been calling it before, and that's how it was able to deduce the right fix for me. And there we have it. Here's our post, and here's our features that you can try out. And now we can keep playing around with this model or this whole process here, or what I'm doing here is I'm just going to run the cells in this entire section. I've brought some of the GitHub models that I saw earlier at the GitHub models page, and I'm going to compare and contrast the different models and how it outputs the social content for me. Because I mean, they each got kind of a different flavor going on, right? And this is I mean.
So you're kind of evaluating the model in the context of the application that you want to be able to build.
Essentially.
To see which model is best for you.
Yeah. And as you said, I'm evaluating the model, and I've experimented with the model from the GitHub models page, right? And I've also kind of started the optimization process of how I want the model to behave in the app. So
awesome.
Yeah.
All in the context of Visual Studio Code.
Yep.
That's great. Thank you, Soojin.
Of course.
Great. Thank you. So in August, we announced that developers can quickly discover, learn, and experiment with advanced AI models. And GitHub developers can access Azure AI models through GitHub Marketplace for their Gen AI apps and APIs and experiment with them for free. And developers can now seamlessly set up and log into their Azure account to deploy their AI apps at scale with enterprise-level security and monitoring. Now, I'm excited to introduce a new capability to the Azure AI platform today: native model evaluation and experimentation that you can use directly in GitHub and your Visual Studio Code editor. The evaluation can be manually or integrated into CI workflows, which can be triggered automatically after every code change. And this allows you to run pre-production evaluation against test data and generate evaluation results for metrics such as fluency and coherence. And the results are posted back directly into GitHub after each run. Experimentation in GitHub Actions can be integrated into the CD workflows to trigger automatically after a deployment completes. So out-of-the-box AI models, the metrics are also provided to make it easy to get started. And you can use all of this in the context of GitHub Copilot for Azure, and that can help you learn how to use it. So let's take a quick look at this in action with a demo chatbot app. So to measure user satisfaction, we recently added a new thumbs up and thumbs down feature to our app. So let me start and ask GitHub Copilot to define a metric that allows us to measure the user satisfaction for my A/B experiment. And it'll actually add it into my config file. Now, modifying a prompt is as easy as changing a text file. So what we're going to do here is to have an A/B experiment on that adventurous prompt. Now what you can see is that based on these code changes, we've kicked off the CI process. And you can see that the pre-production environment is actually testing the evaluation of my model in the CI. Now I've deployed it, and we can actually see that it's running in the CD environment. And I can actually see all of the evaluations as the result of running it in production. And so I can see for this particular experiment that it actually was not a successful experiment, and actually I'm not going to ship this particular version of the experiment, but you can see just how easy it is to be able to scale your AI applications and your AI models and get feedback from your users once they're deployed into production with this capability. So stay tuned to Microsoft Ignite, which is coming up in a couple of weeks, and we'll give you all access to this directly. So now let's touch on the AI application platform. Using the tools that you know and love, Visual Studio and GitHub, you can build intelligent apps on the same infrastructure that OpenAI and GitHub Copilot are actually built on, using the foundational models from leading AI innovators across the entire industry and your own data with all the orchestration and the tooling to wire it all up together. And using those eval capabilities that I just showed you, you can wrap all of this with our industry-leading approach to responsible AI, AI safety, and security. So just to recap, we showed you how every developer can bring the joy back to coding with GitHub Copilot, how you can easily pick up a new cloud and become a cloud-native developer with GitHub Copilot for Azure, and how you can make the transition to become an intelligent app developer with the Azure AI platform and our Visual Studio Code tools for AI. Thank you all. Happy coding. Thank you, GitHub Universe.